So the next item we're moving to is item 7, the long-term plan overview to the decision-making. And Tamsin, I'd like to thank you for taking us through the process here. You're going to remind us today, yet again, how we got to today. And after this, there'll be any questions to Tamsin about how we got here, and it'll be a first test today of questions being actually questions. Thank you, Tamsin.
Na mihi ki a koe chair and tēnā koutou katoa, tērā houtu. My report on today's agenda is a procedural one that sets out the context for today's decisions as they relate to finalising the long-term plan for 2024 to 2034. So most importantly, today's decisions enable staff to prepare final documents for adoption at the end of June. The process for this long-term plan began back in June last year, and briefly, I just wanted to highlight some key milestones and moments during that time. So as a result of your direction through last year's annual plan, this LTP has been heavily guided by your political direction and input. This began with a direction document being sent to the group in July, setting out your expectations around advice and support from staff. Since June, I think as the Mayor indicated, we have held 65 workshops, drop-ins, online briefings and facilitated discussions on a huge range of topics, totalling approximately 120 hours. A massive workshop material that was covered during those sessions will be publicly released today and is attached to another report on today's agenda. Political working groups were formed, and these groups provided a great deal of insight and direction in the lead up to the confirmation of consultation items. As agreed by the Budget Committee in December last year, the Comms and Engagement Plan included multiple deliberative engagement options. These were a great success, and participants were not only able to engage with proposals in more depth, but they walked away with a greater understanding of the complexity and difficulty of the decisions you are required to make. During consultation, we received the largest number of submissions ever received during a long-term plan, roughly under 28,000. Importantly, we continue to move closer to census data in terms of who we are hearing from. So during consultation, we heard from a more diverse group of Aucklanders than we have before, particularly from younger people and from our Pacific and Asian communities. Since consultation closed, we have worked at pace to provide you with advice to support your decisions today, covering that wide range of topics that we consulted on, most of which are summarised and included in today's agenda as an attachment to the mayoral proposal. I did want to note that earlier this week the Audit and Risk Committee met and received a report on the controls and risk management of this process as it relates to final decision making. And the committee resolved to note that the controls and risk management processes to support final decision making for the long-term plan are ongoing and have been working effectively to date. Taking the decisions today enables staff to proceed with drafting final long-term plan documents to support the required audit, ahead of bringing these documents to you for formal adoption on the 27th of June, which allows us then to strike rates for the next financial year. Finally, a big thank you, to our governors, for your continued engagement and input to get us to this point. No te roro, nā ku te roro, ka ora ai te iwi. Nā mihi ki a koutou, nā mihi ki a koe chair, happy to take any pārtai.
Thank you, Tamsin. Have we got a mover and a seconder for the motion on the screen that we note the contents of this report, sets the context for the reports and decisions, Fletcher and Walker. Are there any questions? For those of you who noted that the amount of information which has been attached and worked on through Tamsin, I shall attempt to lift it at 4.3 kilograms. Are there any questions? There are not. Thank you. You can leave the table. Is there any debate to be done on that? If that's not the case, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no, carried. Thank you very much for that. Item 8 is the long-term plan local board feedback and advocacy. We heard from the local boards last week, and many local board chairs have been involved in the workshops. Thank you in particular for Alexis and Anna for your excellent advocacy on the North Harbour Stadium. We'll now hear from Louise Mason about what local boards told us last week. And I welcome local Louise Mason, Renee Burgers and Phoebe Peguero. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa. Local boards have a legislative role as part of the Auckland Council shared governance model to provide input on regional plans. And the governing body must consider the views and preferences expressed by local boards when considering their decisions that affect those local board areas in the LTP. This report provides an overview of local board adopted feedback and advocacy on the proposed long-term plan. It does focus on common themes, and I would note that obviously with 21 boards we haven't been able to provide all details, but also point you to attachment A, which has the resolutions, the full adopted resolutions of the local boards, and attachment B, which includes the adopted advocacy and any other requests and recommendations. As the Chair has pointed out, the boards presented this feedback individually to Budget Committee workshop last week. Just a few high-level comments, and obviously we're here to answer any questions as well too, with Renee and Phoebe. The majority of boards supported the central proposal for the overall direction of the long-term plan, also for city and local development, environment and regulatory and council support. The majority of boards also supported pay more, do more in the areas of transport, water, parks and community. There was broad support for the transport plan as a whole, and there was also support for the Auckland Futures Fund. Some of the adopted advocacy initiatives included, as the Mayor has highlighted, equitable funding for local boards, the retention of the Auckland Transport Capital Fund was also strongly supported, funding and investment in environmental sustainability and improved water quality, funding for stormwater infrastructure and flood mitigation, and funding for new and improved walking and cycling connections and improved public transport network, and funding for upgrades or new aquatic centres. Again, just to point you to the detail in the report itself, and we are happy to answer any questions of detail. Thank you.
I'll get a mover and a seconder for this first of all, so thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Hills, thank you very much for that. Okay, are there any questions of Louise? There's a question for Councillor Foley, please.
Kia ora, thank you Louise and team for your work. It's been a long journey, but we're here and you've done an awesome job. Just some questions on the local board feedback. You said that most of it, they supported the central proposal, but many supported the do more, get more in different areas. Do you have a percentage of how many supported the do more, get more overall? Or do you mean just in the content, like in transport, for example, most of them supported do more, get more? And then I've got one more question.
Can I answer that one?
Kia ora koutou, ko Renee Burgers Takawingoa. On the transport, all local boards provided feedback on the proposal, and the majority, 13, supported the pay more, do more proposal. For water, 11 supported the pay more, do more proposal, and for city and local development, 10 supported the central proposal. And for environment and regulation, 11 supported the central proposal. And for parks and community, 10 supported the pay more, do more proposal.
Kia ora. Thank you. Just gives us an idea of the balance. And my second question is around the Auckland. You say that the board supported the Auckland Future Fund, but we did hear from the boards, and a lot of them in their detail said that they didn't support having the airport shares put into that. Could you tell us which boards didn't support having the airport shares being put or transferred into the Auckland Future Fund? Kia ora.
So 11 boards did not support the proposal for the transfer of the council shareholding into the shareholding of the airport shares. These included Aotea Great Barrier, Henderson Massey, Hibiscus and Bays, Mangere o Tāhuhu, Menyarewa, Otara Papatoetoe, Papakura, Upper Harbour, Waiheke, Waitakere Rangers and 4 local boards.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Darby, please.
Yeah, Louise, I applaud your team that you've pulled some long hours, long nights, early mornings, weekends. Thank you. One of the big differences in the way we approach this engagement is we use tools like the participatory panels, and we went a step further. I'm interested in if you could maybe summarise where those participatory processes and the feedback we drew from those processes might have diverged or signalled something a bit more on the qualitative side that assisted us in guiding, or assisting the staff in guiding the elected members on the direction of travel that our communities were indicating. Are there any sort of key diverging or maybe there's a better word than that, more deliberative in the direction that our people showed us?
Councillor Darby, I don't have that information to hand, but I can obtain that fairly quickly for you. It's certainly true that looking at different ways to engage with the community, the broader community, and get that input is something that has been explored by boards. Can I please come back to you with a response on that question?
Yeah, and it's fine for today. We'll just leave it there today.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Member Kake, please.
Kia ora, Louise. I know your history with supporting things Māori has been even long before you at Auckland Council, but my question really is a line of sight question from input from the Māori community and that eventuating into the final document. Can you give me some examples so that I can support this recommendation where that transparency of submission, because I know all the Māori submissions and how that's manifested into the final product? Just a couple of examples to give me that confidence, please.
Thank you, Member Kake. Look, there are a number of things that contribute to this, which I'll just touch on briefly. Obviously, when boards were considering their input, they did look at their local board plans, which were adopted in October last year. These all included a Māori outcomes section in that, and also were developed using the Kia ora Tamaki Makaro framework, and also previous feedback from mana whenua and Matawaka. So that's the sort of general context in which the boards were considering that. I would also note that the local board agreements, which form part of the long-term plan, do have, and these have a sort of a high level for next year's sort of activities, and they'll be adopted in June. They also include a working with Māori section as well too, so that's sort of the general context. We have got a couple of examples in Henderson Massey local board. They did engage locally with Māori through Hoana Waititi Marae through a hui, and use that to inform their feedback. They've identified they had 84 submissions from people who identified as Māori residing in the Henderson Massey local board area, and Te Kaurau Maki also submitted on the regional topics for the long-term plan, and also things that were specific for the local board area. So in their resolved feedback in the long-term plan, they did support increased Māori outcomes funding of 171 million over 10 years. and also requested support for local boards to access this fund as well. And they have supported Te Kaurau Omaki's feedback, requesting a relationship agreement with Auckland Council. That's one example. We also have Ōrākei local board, also engaged with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei, and also had that feeding through into their resolutions, and Mangere o Tāhuhu is another board where we can also provide some feedback there. I think it'd be fair to say it's developing, but it is something that we're continuing to support the boards to continue to develop their relationships and actually feed that through in a meaningful way, both in things like the local board plan, but also through these processes. Kia ora.
Thank you, Member Kake. Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick one. Look, is it a concern that a number of local boards passed their resolutions on the Future Fund before the workshop explaining the details actually took place?
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. The timeframes for boards having their feedback through and being resolved were very difficult this year. Obviously, a number of things have moved since the boards resolved their feedback, but again, you know, that has been some of the constraints of the process this year.
Good point, thank you. That's the end of the questions. We'll retire you people and we'll move to any debate if there is any debate on this. In the absence of that, I'll put the motion that we consider the feedback and advocacy initiatives from local boards, which we did do. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, carried. Right, the Merrill proposal, I'll move the recommendations and I have Councillor Sayers seconding those.
Certainly.
There are some